الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Brothers and sisters, when it comes to knowledge, Islamic knowledge, after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the first person that comes to mind? It's Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq usually. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam had 4,000 students. According to Imam Malik, one of the Sunni scholars and stars of Sunni jurisprudence, he says about Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, and hearts it has not passed anybody more excellent than Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. But the interesting thing is here is that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, in this narration, he tells Imam Musa al-Kadhim, his son, he tells him something very interesting. What does he tell him? In this narration, he says that Imam Musa alayhi salam says, the scholar of Al Muhammad, the scholar of the progeny of the Prophet, will be of your progeny. He tells Imam Musa al-Kadhim that Al Muhammad will be from your family, will be of your progeny, will be your son, from your offspring. I wish that I could meet him, Imam Sadiq says alayhi salam. And his name will be the same name as Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the person, when it comes to Islamic knowledge, with the many students that he had, he says that Alim Muhammad, the scholar of the Ahlul Bayt, is Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha. Please recite a salawat, inshallah. And just like he's foretold, Imam Sadiq said in this narration, that I would not see him. I wish I could see Imam Ridha alayhi salam. I wish I could see him. Imam Ridha alayhi salam was born the same year that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was martyred. Maybe only 15 days difference between 25th of Shawwal and the 11th of Dhul Qa'dah that Imam Ridha alayhi salam was born. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam missed him by 15 days. And he wished that he could meet him. And from this narration from Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, he says that I saw the Prophet in a dream. And what did the Prophet say to me? He says, Ali ibnuka alladhi yanduru binurillah. The Prophet told him that Ali, your son, will see by the light of Allah. Imam Ridha alayhi salam, his knowledge is not like our knowledge. His knowledge is from the light of Allah. وَيَسْمَعُ بِتَفْهِيمِهِ, and he will understand from the understanding of Allah. Brothers and sisters, when we go to the shrine of Ali ibn Musa Ridha alayhi salam, one of the interesting things that we say is, أَشْهَدُ أَنَّكَ تَسْمَعُ كَلَامِي. I bear witness, it's in the ziyarat, I bear witness that you can hear my voice. Why? It's from this narration, because يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ وَيَسْمَعُ بِتَفْهِيمِهِ, because he sees from the light of Allah and he hears from the tafheem and understanding of Allah. Then we say, Tashhadu maqami, Imam Ridha alayhi salam, doing your ziyarat, but you see me. You see where I'm standing, you hear my voice when I say salam to you, وَتَرُدُّ salami, and you answer my salams. And then in this narration that the Prophet says about Imam Ridha alayhi salam in the dream to Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, وَيَنْتِقُ بِحِكْمَتِهِ, and Imam Ridha will speak by the wisdom of Allah. And this is what we're going to mention tonight, the wisdom that Imam Ridha alayhi salam had. وَيُصِيبُ وَلَا يُخْطَئ. Yusib means to hit. His hikmat would hit, it wouldn't miss. It was correct. It was not incorrect. وَيَعْلَمُ وَلَا يَجْهَلُ. And Imam Ridha alayhi salam, he will know and he will not have jahl. So tonight, brothers and sisters, today was the 30th of Safar. It was the day that they say Imam Ridha alayhi salam became martyred. It is the day that for about 2 months, you brothers and sisters have mourned and remembered Imam Hussein and the children of Imam Hussein. The month of Muharram and Safar is now over. But tonight, because of the remembrance and the thawab and remembering Imam Ridha alayhi salam, we want to dedicate the last day of Safar of these 2 holy months that were a time period for us to raise our awareness, change ourselves, become more Husayni, become inshallah more Hasani, become more Radawi with Imam Ridha alayhi salam. So tonight we dedicate this majlis to the great Imam Ali Muhammad Ali ibn Musa Ridha. Please recite a salawat, inshallah. In history, it's rare to have a king, a khalif, a ruler invite an infallible imam and have people challenge him in arguments, bring different philosophies, bring different religions, and have an infallible imam answer. Well, this, brothers and sisters, was the time period of Imam Ridha. Ma'mun brought people from different religions and had Imam Ridha alayhi salam argue, and with different languages, with a philosophy that they were aware of, he would argue with them in the best form and manner, and he would win. And this was something that Ma'mun was very upset, because whoever he brought to Imam Ridha alayhi salam, he would win in the different debates that he has. When you look at Al-Ihtijaj of Tabarsi, you see that there's many different debates. Or when you look at Uyun al-Akhbar al-Ridha alayhi salam, maybe 100 pages about the different debates that Imam Ridha had with different people from different religions. One of the scholars that before he wanted to become a muballigh for America, he said, I'm going to study some of the debates that Imam Ridha alayhi salam had and how he answered and how he combated different ideologies, because this is a very big benefit for us. And tonight we'll be mentioning about some of the ideologies and some of the deviations that Imam Ridha alayhi salam faced, and how he, with beautiful arguments from using the Quran, how he gave answers to them. Imam Ridha alayhi salam had a hawza in Medina. He had 313 students in history, it says. There, it says that there are many different, he taught in Medina, many different narrations about kalam, about tawheed, about imamat. One of the longest narrations about imamat in the 70 qualities of imamat is from Imam Ridha alayhi salam. After Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, maybe after them, Imam Ridha alayhi salam would have the most narrations about imamat and tawheed. They compiled the sayings of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, and it's equal maybe to 2,500 narrations that it was recorded. Because the people at the time were recording and writing. It was in front of everybody. It was in front of the Khalif. So it was well recorded. Imam Ridha alayhi salam even has a dissertation on medicine. It's called Tibbul Ridha or Risala Dhahabiyya, because Ma'mun said you should write this in gold. He wrote about medicine, about different parts of the body and what you should do. And these are things that are a legacy for us about Imam Ridha alayhi salam. And he lived for 55 years, right? He had 3 Khalifs at his time period. Harun al-Rashid, then he had Muhammad Amin, and Abdullah Ma'mun for 5 years and 5 years. So 20 years of imamat. He was 10 years under Harun al-Rashid, 5 years under Muhammad Amin, and 5 years under Abdullah Ma'mun. Because Harun al-Rashid martyred Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, and the Alawis and the Shias were very upset, he left Imam Ridha alayhi salam a little bit of freedom. So he was more free to teach. He was more free to proclaim his imamat. And people were afraid. They were afraid, why are you proclaiming your imamat? Why are you saying this about imamat? And Imam Ridha alayhi salam told them, promised them, that Harun cannot do anything to me. Just how the Prophet said that they cannot harm him from his tribe, that also Imam Ridha alayhi salam says, if Harun harms me, I am not your imam. He told them that Harun would not harm me. So the time period of Imam Ridha alayhi salam was a time period that he was more free to propagate Islam. And it was basically the last years that Ma'mun forced him to accept the successorship. He forced him to accept that he's going to succeed Ma'mun. And during that time period, and this is what we're going to talk about tonight, brothers and sisters, there were 4 issues that Imam Ridha alayhi salam dealt with, 4 topics. One was the topic of kalam, the topic of beliefs, the different beliefs that people had, the narrations that were being spread in his time period. For example, they spread the narrations about tashbih, which is comparing Allah to a human, having a type of human figure for Allah, right? Also, they had issues with tafsir, and they would do tafsir of the ayahs differently, and Imam Ridha alayhi salam would correct them in tafsir. So the first was kalam, the second was tafsir, the third is hadith. They accepted the narrations of just from somebody being a sahaba, even Muawiyah, they would accept narrations just from being a sahaba of the Prophet. And fourth, the threats and the schemes that Ma'mun had. He was one of the most intellectual of the Abbasids, and he had schemes and plots for Imam Ridha alayhi salam. And these 4 issues is what we're going to talk about tonight. Please recite a salawat, inshallah. So in terms of beliefs and the ideologies that were being spread, one of them is a tashbih, which is comparing God or giving God a human form. This is something that the Imams were against. This is something that the Quran is against, to compare God to a human being. We see narrations in Bukhari, right? We see narrations about God having fingers, that his feet reach hell, right? We have narrations about ru'ya, about seeing Allah on the Day of Judgment. These were issues that the Imam would refute, right? He would say in this narration that As-Saduq brings, La yudraku bil hawas, God cannot be seen by the 5 senses. God cannot be sensed. Wala yuqasu bin nas, right? He cannot be compared to humans. He fought against this ideology. Just how Imam Sadiq alayhi salam say in terms of fiqh and jurisprudence, fought against qiyas and comparing a hukm to another hukm, a ruling to another ruling. Imam Ridha alayhi salam fought against people that believe that Allah can be compared to a human, right? That is shirk, right? وَلَا يُقَاسُ بِالنَّاسِ مَعْرُوفٌ بِغَيْرِ تَشْبِيهٍ. He is known without tashbih, without being compared to a human being. There are different narrations from, say, in Bukhari, say Hadith 530, volume 9, you will definitely see your Lord with your own eyes, right? Imam Ridha is saying was to say La yudraku bil hawas. Or in another narration, you will see your Lord on the day of resurrection as you see the full moon, and you have no difficulty in seeing him. So the ideas were being spread during that time that Allah can be seen, Allah can be seen. Imam Ridha alayhi salam would tell the people that no, Allah cannot be seen. He is higher than time, He is higher than space, right? He cannot be seen. Another group that were causing problems in terms of Islamic ideology were the group of Mujabbara. They were the people that believed in determinism, that everything happens with fate. And this was something that the Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas loved, because it means that this is our fate, this is your destiny, we are your rulers. This is what God wants. This is God's will. I am your ruler, even if I drink alcohol, even if I kill innocent people, I am your ruler, right? But this was something that Imam Ridha alayhi salam fought against. He said, okay, please recite salawat. ما عرف الله من شبهه بخلقه. This narration, somebody that does tashbih and compares God to a human being, he has not understood God. And also, وَوَصَفَهُ بِالْعَدْ مَنْ نَسَبَ إِلَيْهِ ذُنُوبَ عِبَادِهِ. And whoever says that, he attributes the sins of the people to God, right? When there are people that, like the khulafa of that time, they would attribute their own sins, and the wrong things that they would do, they would attribute it to God. Imagine somebody, for example, would hurt somebody and say, this is God's will. Now you're hurt, this is what God wanted. And this was the same mantiq and logic that they said to say the Zainab to Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, that God killed Imam Hussein. And the Imam would answer, no, you killed Imam Hussein. Don't attribute your sins to Allah. A lot of times we see in our society, this is something that we might do, is we attribute things that happen in our lives, we say this is from Allah. Even though many times we are at fault, right? Or sometimes we did not plan, we did not do the proper preparation, and then when it doesn't work out, we say Allah did this, right? So in Shia philosophy and ideologies, we believe in free will and also in determinism, right? We believe in free will, and that also Allah in Tawheed Af'ali, that everything happens from Allah, that we should plan. We have ikhtiyar, we have free will, but at the same time, everything is done by Allah. We cannot blame Allah for our shortcomings. And some of the narrations, it says if somebody has land, has water, and then he doesn't plant food, he has the ability to plant, and then he says, Allah, why don't you give me rizq? Why don't you? Allah does land of him, he curses him. He says, I have given you land, I have given you water, why don't you plant something? Why don't you grow something in your farm? Right? So those in this narration, مَنْ نَسَبَ إِلَيْهِ ذُنُوبَ عِبَادِهِ, whoever relates and attributes his own faults, his own sins to Allah, he has not understood Allah. So this is something for us to learn, brothers and sisters, that whatever we do, we should do it with planning. We should do it also at the same time with tawakkul ilallah, so that we can, inshallah, have a correct ideology, inshallah. One of the other groups of the time, so we said the tashbih, people that compare Allah to a human form, and we said that Imam Ridha alayhi salam rejected this. We talked about mujabbara, the people that thought that everything that happens would happen because of Allah's will, and that we do not have free will, and we said that Imam Ridha alayhi salam rejected this. We also had a group of Waqifiyya, and I believe there's a small amount of them that even exist today, in very small amount. And the Waqifiyya, it comes to Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam, they stop. They believe in Musa Kadhim, and after that, that is their last Imam. What happened in history is that Imam Musa alayhi salam had 3 representatives, and these representatives would collect khums. And one of them was Ziyad ibn Marwan Ghandi, or Ali ibn Hamza Bata'ini, and Uthman ibn Isa Rawasi. And because of the large amount of money that they had, right, they say that Ziyad ibn Marwan had 70,000 dinars, Ali ibn Hamza had 30,000 dinars, the other had Uthman ibn Isa also had some amount of money. Because of the money that they had, and they did not want to give this khums to Ali ibn Musa Ridha alayhi salam, they rejected, they said that he is not the Imam. Because of money, they said that the next imamate has stopped, and then they used the money however they thought was right. So this was how the Waqifiyya started. And this was another problem that Imam Ridha alayhi salam had with these 3 people. Another group of people that were during the time of Imam Ridha alayhi salam were the Qulat. The Qulat are people that do qulub. They exaggerate about the Imams. It's very important for us to be well balanced, to not to deny the Imams a status or a position that they have. On the other hand, not to attribute something to them that they're not. And the Ghulat would say basically that the Imams or Imam Ali alayhi salam were Allah, right? That they were divine. And this was another problem that Imam Ridha alayhi salam faced with the Ghulats. And he told them this example, and this isn't word for word, but he said, your example is like a people waiting for a king to come, right? A king wants to come. Instead of the king coming, a representative comes. And the people, instead of bowing and respecting the king, they take the representative that the king sent as a king, right? So the Qulat say the Imam, it basically was telling them that the Imams are divine guides, are guides for us, but instead of their guides and messengers, say the prophets were messengers for Allah and the Ahlul Bayt were Imams, were divine guides, but you're taking them as Allah, the king himself. So he refuted the Ghulat of the time of that time. The second issue we said, so this was about kalam, and that these were the issues that Imam Ridha alayhi salam saw. And it's very important for us when we read this in history and we analyze this, is for us to, inshallah, ourselves research about research about our Islamic beliefs in detail, so that when people ask us questions, when we are faced with ideologies that challenge us, we can give a good answer. When they ask us, why are you Muslim? Why do you believe in God? Why do you believe in the Akhirat? We have very strong answers because our Imams alayhimus salam gave the best answers. And this is one of the beauties about Islam, is a religion that understanding is encouraged. One of the most important acts of perfection is at-tafaqquh fi ad-din, a deep understanding of religion. So because of all these ideologies that are out there, it's very important for the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen to understand why they're Shia, to understand why they're Husayni, to understand why they do ziyarat of the Imams, to understand why they do tawassul and they ask for shafa'at of the Imams. So the other issue was tafsir. The Quran has different ayahs, and some people, and some of the scholars like Fakhr Razi would come to some of the verses of the Quran and they would misinterpret them, right? They would say, for example, this verse, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ نَزْلَةً أُخْرَى, right? And the Prophet certainly saw him in another descent. Allah, he says, ra'ahu, he saw him with his eyes. He saw Allah. If somebody reads the Quran like this, say, oh wow, so you can see Allah. Ibn Taymiyyah says Allah can be seen, but how he can be seen, we don't know. He admits too that Allah can be seen. But he says how it is, I don't know, but it's bid'ah to talk about it. So Fakhr Razi also, he has the same issue that God can be seen. So how did Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha, when somebody says, brings you a verse of the Quran and the word ra'ahu comes, and he saw him, and he certainly saw him in another descent, how did he answer him? It was very interesting. He brought a few verses down, verse 18 of the same chapter, لَقَدْ رَأَى مِنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِ الْكُبْرَى. He certainly saw of the greatest signs of his Lord. Not that he saw his Lord. It says, رَأَى مِنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِ. He saw of the signs of his Lord. So Imam Ridha alayhi salam would answer according to the Quran, would get this verse and interpret the previous verse with the verse that happened later. And when they asked and they saw Imam Ridha, they would say the answers that he would give. It says, كَانَ كَلَامُهُ وَجَوَابُهُ وَتَمَثُّلُهُ انْتِزَاعَاتٍ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. That the speech of Imam Ridha, that the jawab of Imam Ridha, the answers that he would give, and the examples that he would give are derived from the Quran. He would answer them according to the logic of the Quran. In this example that I gave, he gave the example, I gave the example that God can be seen in the verse, and then the next verse says his signs can be seen. In another issue that the people had, they said that if somebody sins and they do a big sin, then they are not a Muslim anymore. They would do takfir. They would say if somebody is a big sinner, does one of the greater sins, he is not a Muslim anymore. Imam Ridha alayhi salam read him this verse. He did tafsir of this verse. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُم. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَذُو مَغْفِرَةٍ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ. And that Allah, indeed your Lord, is full of forgiveness for the people despite their wrongdoing. That God will forgive. He said that dhulm, basically, he said dhulm means a big sin. So if somebody does dhulm according to this verse, he's doing a big sin, Allah will forgive him, it says. It doesn't say he is not a Muslim anymore and he left Islam, he's doing shirk, or right now he's doing kufr. It says that Allah will forgive him. So it means that this verse, if you think about it, it means that they are still a Muslim if somebody sins, but if they seek forgiveness, he will be forgiven. Also, when it came to ru'yatullah and seeing Allah, Imam Ridha alayhi salam would tell him, basically this isn't word for word, but if you want to see something, you have to have knowledge of it. If you want to see something, you have to have complete knowledge. And this verse of the Quran, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِعِلْمِهِ, and they do not encompass it in knowledge. We cannot fully understand Allah. We understand Him to the extent that we can. But because we don't have full understanding of Allah, therefore He said you cannot see Him. You see things that you can have a full understanding of. Please recite a salawat. The other issue was, we said about hadith, the hadiths that were being spread during that time period. And another threat that Imam Ridha alayhi salam had was from Ma'mun. As I said, Ma'mun was one of the most intellectual of the Bani Abbas. And he wanted to bring Imam Ridha alayhi salam to Marw, where he was, in Khurasan. Ma'mun wanted to do this for different reasons. It wasn't that he thought that Imam Ridha alayhi salam deserved the imamat and that he should give him the khilafat right away. Because it's interesting to know, most historians say that Imam Ridha alayhi salam was martyred, right? Some historians say that Ma'mun killed him, right? So Ma'mun, he wanted to do this for different reasons. One was that he wanted to give legitimacy to his khilafat, to his government, because he had problems in Khurasan. Harun went to Khurasan. He had problems with Khurasan, with the Alawis, with the Shias. Now he wanted to say that Ali ibn Musa Ridha is part of my government. So now I'm legit. He is my successor. I'm going to rule, then after them he's going to rule, Imam Ridha. So he wanted to give legitimacy. Second, he wanted to bring the status of Imam Ridha down, because Imam Ridha was very important in Medina. He wanted to bring him towards him, close to him, and bring his status down, make the people think that Imam Ridha alayhi salam loves the world, is in love with the dunya, right? He is now in the palace of the king. But Imam Ridha alayhi salam, he clearly rejected this. He clearly made people believe that he is doing this for Allah, that he's commanded to do this. Because when he went to the palace of the king and there was food everywhere, and they were inviting Imam Ridha alayhi salam to eat, he would take food, and the best part of the food, before imagine a meal of the king of that time, of a ruler, there's different types of meat, different types of fruit, different types of rice, and Imam Ridha alayhi salam would take the best part of each food, put it aside. Before he would eat, he would give it to the poor, right? So this is how Imam Ridha alayhi salam, one of the ways that he would refute. Right when he entered Marw, he saw that there was a janazah, they were doing tashiyah janazah. They were taking a dead body. Right away he went under it and helped out in taking that funeral. But that's something that the kings would not do at the time. Or when there was Salatul Eid al-Fitr and it became a very something that the soldiers would wear shoes and was very fancy. Imam Ridha alayhi salam would come without a horse, very, very humble, And the people began to follow him, and he did the prayer, and he came to prayer in a very, very humble way. So Imam Ridha alayhi salam, with this strategy that Ma'mun had to bring him to the dunya, to somehow make the people, the Alawis, think that, okay, this isn't an infallible Imam, Imam Ridha alayhi salam showed how humble he is and that how he is not attached to the world. Also, he wanted to bring fitna, Ma'mun. He wanted the Alawis to fight against Imam Ridha because he had killed, his father had killed Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam, and they were very upset at the time. So he thought that many people would fight against Imam Ridha. That they would say, why did you accept the successorship of Ma'mun? But Imam Ridha alayhi salam, brothers and sisters, as we know, things in history, it's difficult. We don't say that we can analyze it right away, right? We're very limited to when we're analyzing the actions of the Imams. We don't claim that we understand all of it. But many years down the line, sometimes the hikmat shows itself. The hikmat comes. For example, people were asking, maybe why did Imam Hussein alayhi salam bring his children, bring his wife and family to Karbala? Why? If you want to fight, why do you bring your wife and family? Later on, we found out the role that Sayyidah Zainab had in reviving and remembering Karbala. The role that the children of Imam Hussein, Sayyidah Ruqayyah, had, that she's buried in Sham, right? And now Syria, there's in maybe 10, 15 years ago, when many of us, say 20 years ago, many Islamic seminaries, because of the shrine of Sayyidah Ruqayyah, Sayyidah Zainab was there, many different ulama put houses there. And the message of the Ahl al-Bayt started beginning spread in the capital of the Nawasib, the capital of the Bani Umayyah, right? So things in history, we cannot say that I understand the actions of the Imam fully. Our responsibility is to understand and then submit to the will of the Imams. Many of these philosophies will be expounded upon by the 12th Imam. But as I said, things in history later on answer. One of the things that Imam Ridha alayhi salam, maybe that he came to Mashhad, was because of that his shrine would be in Mashhad, and that during that time many of the Shi'as would then, it would be a center for Shi'ism in that center of the world, right? That would be a hikmat that we can find out maybe 1200 years after Imam Ridha alayhi salam has been martyred. Another thing is that he was forced. That was the main thing. That when that letter after letter Ma'mun wrote to him, he rejected. He went to the people and told them basically that you're not going to see me anymore. He went to the shrine of the Prophet and cried and said farewell, as showed the people that he did not want to accept this. Again, he went to Marv, immediately when he came, he says, I do not want to accept this. But Ma'mun threatened him with killing him, and the knowledge that the Imam had, he said that he had to accept. And it was a short time, maybe 4 or 5 years, that he was there and the Imam was martyred. Brothers and sisters, the two last things that I would like to mention tonight. One is about the importance of the ziyarat of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. Many of us have gone to Mashhad, many of us haven't. And tonight, inshallah, we would like to address how important the ziyarat of Imam Ridha is. When we look at different scholars in history, we see that not only did the Shia do ziyarat of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, also Sunni ulama have done ziyarat. Not only do the Shias want and ask for God's forgiveness when they visit their Imam, the Sunni ulama, when they visited the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, they asked, and it worked. They said, the grief that I have was removed. I'm going to give you 2 examples in history. One is from the book Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, which is a very important book from Ibn Hajar, one of the most important commentators of Sahih Bukhari. The second is from Ibn Hibban, who has the book Sahih Ibn Hibban. So from Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, it says that Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Mu'ammal says, I was with the Imam of Hadith, Abu Bakr Khazima. So he was with Abu Bakr Khazima, Imam of Hadith, an expert in Hadith of that time period. And Ibn Ali al-Thaqafi and a group of scholars, we all intended to visit the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. It's a group of Sunni scholars and an Imam of Hadith. He said that Ibn Khazima, he said that when he came to Tus, he respected and honored with humility so much the shrine of Imam Ridha, the grave of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. He started weeping and crying so much that this narrator said that I was shocked. I was mutahayyir, I was shocked of how this Imam of Hadith is crying at the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. The second example is from Ibn Hibban. He says that Ibn Hibban lived 963, about 450 years ago. He is a prominent Shafi'i Hadith expert. He says in his book, Al-Thuqat, Thuqat is his book, he says himself that Ali ibn Musa Ridha was martyred immediately with poison that Ma'mun gave him. Point number one, he says that Ma'mun poisoned him. Our question is, how can you have a Khalif at the time be a murderer of the family of the Prophet? It doesn't make sense. How can you have a Khalifa at that time be a zalim and oppressor and still be the successor of the Prophet? Right? So he says Ma'mun martyred Imam Ridha alayhi salam. And then he says people come to the ziyarat of Imam Ridha alayhi salam next to Harun al-Rashid. He said, and then he says, I had visited him numerously. When I was in Tus, every time that I had difficulty in my life, I would visit his grave and God would remove my difficulties. Ibn Hibban is saying, I would visit the shrine of Imam Ridha and God would remove my difficulties. Then he says, these are things that I have seen many times, and that God would answer my prayers in the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. Ibn Hibban. May God let us die with the love of Al-Mustafa and his Ahlul Bayt. He says, Al-Thuqat. Please recite salawat. So that was from our Sunni brothers about the ziyarat of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. From our Shia sources, let's examine in Man La Yahduruhu al-Faqih, Shaykh al-Saduq has this narration that Imam Ridha alayhi salam mentions himself before dying, that there's going to be a buq'a, there's going to be a grave, a shrine, a place that's going to be mukhtalif al-malaika. It's going to be a place where the malaika are. And a malaika, fawjun yanzil min as-sama wa fawjun yas'ud. Angels are descending, angels are ascending, Imam Ridha alayhi salam says. Until the day of judgment, he says, and angels will be descending, angels will be ascending. And then they asked them, Yabna Rasulullah, wa ayyu buqa hadhihi? What buqa, what shrine, where is this place? Qala hiya bi'ard Tus. This will be in the place of Tus. This is where Mashhad today is. Fahiya Wallah rawdatun min riyad al-jannah. I swear it will be one of the paradises of heaven. When you enter, I don't know if you brothers and sisters, how many have gone, but when you enter the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, you experience this heaven. You experience heaven on earth. You see that there's no difference anymore between being in this dunya or being in the akhirat, because this is the beauty and the final enjoyment that a believer can have. They say in the Day of Judgment, there's going to be different wells, different rivers, wells that a person will have in his home. That there's different verses of the Quran about rivers of milk, rivers of honey, rivers of wine, right? And then some of the verses of the Quran say there will be wells that wells, and some of the tafasir that they give is these wells will change. When a person wants, say, milk, it will change to milk. When he wants honey, it will change to honey. And from all these na'amat and all these bounties that Allah gives, some people, the angels will come and say, how come you didn't make use of all these material blessings that we gave you? And they answer that I was with the Ahlul Bayt. I didn't have time. Too I was too amazed about what I see with the Ahlul Bayt. I didn't make use of my house, all the food in heaven, because sitting next to Imam Hussein, sitting next to Imam Ridha alayhi salam, is much more joyful than me than these things. And that is how when they say Rawdatun min Riyad al-Jannah, it is a heaven. And we experience, and inshallah when somebody comes with ma'rifah and understands, they will experience heaven. Man zarani fi tilka al-bugh'a kana kaman zara Rasulullah. Do you want to visit the shrine of the Prophet of Islam? Imam Ridha alayhi salam says, if you visit me, it's as if you're going to Medina and visiting the Prophet. وَكَتَبَ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى ثَوَابَ أَلْفْ حَجَّ مَبْرُورًا. You want 1,000 Hajj, good Hajj? وَأَلْفْ أُمْرَ مَقْبُولًا. And 1,000 accepted Umrahs. وَكُنْتُ أَنَا وَأَبَائِي شُفَعَاءَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. In me and my fathers and I will be their shafi', will be their intercessors on the day of judgment. Do we want to have the Ahlul Bayt? I ask you, brothers and sisters, do we want to have them do shafa'at of us? Where we can visit the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, because he himself is saying we will do shafa'at for our zawar. There are places that Imam Ridha alayhi salam said, if you visit me, I will help you in these 3 places. One is when the letter of deeds and actions in the day of judgment, when they write down how our sins and our good deeds. Imam Ridha alayhi salam says, if you visit me, I will come then. Imagine they're going to give us all the sins that we did. We need help. Imam Ridha alayhi salam is going to help us, inshallah, if we visit him. Second, the Sirat, the thin, narrow bridge that we're afraid of falling into hell. If somebody falls, they'll fall into hell. Imam Ridha alayhi salam will grab our hand, inshallah. The third is the mizan, when they weigh our a'mal and they compare it to the a'mal of Imam Ali alayhi salam. His a'mal is 100%. They see how much is your a'mal. Imam Ridha alayhi salam will come, inshallah. Please recite a salawat. Tonight I leave you with a story of one of the teachers of Ayatollah Wahida Khurasani. I gave you stories of the ulama, the Sunni ulama, that they would give their hajats, they would get their du'as answered in Mashhad. I want to give you the story of Ayatollah Habibullah Gul Payagani, one of the teachers of Ayatollah Wahida Khurasani, which is one of our present day Maraja. They say that Ayatollah Habibullah Gul Payagani was one of the first always to visit the shrine of Imam Ridha. During the time period that he was at, it wasn't the haram, the shrine wasn't open for 24 hours. The shrine was open, say, before for Salatul Layl, and then it would close at night. This alim would come, and he would be the first person at the shrine of Imam Ridha for many years. And sometimes it was closed. He would pray, he would do ruku, and snow would come on his back until they would open the door of the haram, of the shrine. So for many years, maybe 40, 30 years, he was the first person to visit the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. He became sick. This is a famous story. He became sick, and he asked Imam Ridha alayhi salam, he said that I have visited you for 30, 40 years. And I believe also that he visited Amir al-Mu'mineen too in Najaf. He says that I visited you every day. Every day I came to your shrine. Every day I was the first person. He asked him, can you come and visit me once? Can you visit me? And then before his surgery, he had this dream, or he saw Imam Ridha alayhi salam, and Imam Ridha alayhi salam brought him a flower. And then he woke up. The doctors said that he did not need surgery anymore after that. Miraculously, he was cured. And after that, it's very interesting. They say Ayatollah Habibullah Gul Payagani would, everywhere he would put his hand on, he would cure that person. If somebody's knee hurt, if somebody had different problems, he would put his hand, and immediately that person would be cured. Not only did Imam Ridha alayhi salam seeing him cause him to be cured. Also that when Imam Ridha alayhi salam gave him that flower, his hand cured everything. At the end of his life, though, they said that it wasn't immediately, that he would have to rub his hand a little bit and then that person would be cured. They asked him, why? Why is it taking longer now? He says, because of shaking hands with sinners. Because I have shooken the hands of sinners, the touch or seeing Imam Ridha alayhi salam, it has less of an effect. Tonight, brothers and sisters, it is the last day of Safar. It was the last day of Safar. We want to, inshallah, open our hearts to the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. We say, inshallah, together, Ya Abul Hasan, Ya Ali ibn Musa, Ayyuhar Ridha, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ya Hujjatallahi ala khalqih, O decisive argument of Allah over mankind. Ya Sayyidina wa Mawlana, Inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na. We turn towards thee and seek your intercession. وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. Let's say this 3 times. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. They say that when Ma'mun decided to poison Imam Ridha alayhi salam, they gave him a poison that immediately had a very consequential effect on him. The servant that came to give grape juice to him, she hid, they say, in her nails. In one of her hands, it was full of poison, the nails. The other hand, there was not poison. So when she came to squeeze the grapes and give grape juice to Ma'mun, she gave him the good and pure grape juice. But she had hidden poison, and Ma'munah had her hide this poison, and when she squeezed it, this is according to some stories, narrations, it poisoned the grape juice, and Imam Ridha alayhi salam became poisoned. Brothers and sisters, this month we ask Allah that to accept our tawassul and accept all those that have helped in these 2 months for the mourning of Imam Hussein and his family. We have witnessed the killing of Imam Hussein in the stories that we've read. We have heard and read about Imam Sajjad alayhi salam as he was martyred in Muharram. And also Imam Ridha, the Prophet of Islam, Imam Hassan. But imagine, brothers and sisters, that the caravan of Karbala, after going from Kufa to Dimashq or Damascus, comes back to Medina. And the people of Medina are crying because Hussein did not come back. Ali Akbar did not come back. Abbas did not come back. But worse, or something that is very, very sad, is that this caravan that had in it many different children, some say maybe there's 18, 20, 25 children that were in Karbala. Imam Bagha alayhi salam was small. They have left somebody in Syria. Because it is the end of the month of Safar. We would like to do tawassul and remember the 3-year-old daughter of Imam Hussein, the 5-year-old daughter of Imam Hussein that was left in Syria. The caravan came back, but how much does it hurt her Aunt Zainab, to come back and one of the children not to be with her? Sayyidah Ruqayya, as you know, brothers and sisters, was killed, was basically from grief and sorrow was killed. One of the representatives of visiting the shrine of Sayyidah Ruqayya, who has been there for many years, says that I have seen so many miracles from the shrine of Sayyidah Ruqayya. So tonight, we tell Imam Hussein that Imam Hussein, come and see your daughter. Come and see your daughter that after you were killed, she did not sleep for many nights. She has become an orphan. Instead of counting the stars at night, what does a young daughter do, a young girl do? She counts the stars at night. Instead of counting the stars at night, she counts her wounds and how many times she was hit by the enemy. Her feet, Imam Hussein, are like your lips that have become blistered and cracked. Also, her feet have become blistered and cracked, walking in the desert. She has not been caressed. When a small girl, she loses her father, they tell her it's okay. Instead of being caressed, she was smacked and beaten. Look at her. Her face is now pale. There's no more color in her face. Instead of brushing her hair, maybe you brothers and sisters, I'm sure you've seen how a 3-year-old girl is. You brush her hair. Instead of her hair being brushed, it was scorched by the fire of the tents. She said in Syria, they say, Man dha alladhi qata'a waridak, when they brought the head of Imam Hussein, who severed your head? Ya abata, man dha alladhi aytamani ala sighar sanni. At such a young age, who has made me a yatim, an orphan? Ya abata, man baghiya ba'daka narju. Who do we have hope to? Abbas is gone, Hussein is gone. Who do I have hope to? She says, how hard is it being an orphan? How hard is it being a captive? She's only 3 years old. She says that I have become old at the age of 3 from so much suffer and misery. I'm like an old lady. My heart yearns for you, she says. Oh Father, let me not tell you what I've seen. Let me not tell you what I've heard. Let me tell you something. Tell your mother, Fatima, she says, tell your mother, Fatima, that I have suffered some of her pain. I have suffered some of her pain. From the enemy, I have tasted the beating. I have tasted the beating that Az-Zahra had. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ahl baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin wa saya'lamu alladhina dhalamu ayyu munqalabin yanqalibun. Salawat. Dear Allah, we ask you, those that helped in the majalis of Imam Hussein these 2 months throughout the world, those that provided food, those that provided the money for the places that held the majalis of Imam Hussein, those that visited the shrines of Imam Hussein and gave respect to Imam Hussein, those that cried for Imam Hussein, to inshallah reward them. Brothers and sisters,